Patch 12.05 was a hot mess. You know it, and even Blizzard knows it. And it's not the first time either. And they've been on damage control since the patch launched, putting up hotfix after hotfix for class issues, housing, void assaults, you name it. If it was in the patch, it was broken. But I'm going to talk about the stuff that they're not documenting, the issues you experienced that no one has written about, that there is no Wildhead article for, that there's no blue post in the hotfixes from Blizzard for, that there's no apology for. Here's the first issue. There was a crash bug that affected the UI that was affecting everyone that was playing on an ARM computer, be it a Mac or PC. If you were playing on an ARM computer, this is what your Tuesday looked like. Crash after crash after crash after crash, and there's nothing you could do about it but wait for a fix. And this was caused by a bug in the UI that was so niche that it only affected a small subset of ARM computers. And because it only affected a small number of users, nobody talked about it. Me included. I spent the first 2 hours of my stream on Tuesday, which you should follow, by the way, diagnosing this crash to help Blizzard fix it faster. It's fixed now, but it took 2 days, and it made the game unplayable for many players. The next issue was an undocumented add-on change that Blizzard didn't tell you about. Tell us about. Tell anyone about. They put a bunch of patch notes, and even had put in the UI Discord a bunch of add-on changes that made it into the patch, but they forgot to tell us about this one, and this was a key change that broke most of the add-ons on Tuesday. You logged in, and so many add-ons were broken, and it's not because the add-on developers didn't get ready for the patch, it's just that they only got ready for the changes they were aware of, myself included. Nobody knew this was in the patch until patch day, and then we were like, well, shit. We gotta fix our add-ons now. This is how I spent the rest of my Tuesday. And let me explain what happened. SetFont is a common API used by add-ons to basically, well, set the font. Set the style, set what font face you're using, set the size, all that stuff. What changed is that in the past, when you set a font that doesn't exist anymore, it would just fail silently and would just fall back to default font or something. So let's say you were using lib shared media. Let's say you had WeakAuras installed, the previous expansion, and your add-ons were set to fonts that were provided by WeakAuras, but then this expansion, WeakAuras, didn't exist anymore. Well, your settings for that add-on are still referencing that font you no longer have installed, but up until this week's patch, it was failing silently. It was just defaulting to default text, and everything worked. But on Tuesday, everything exploded. You logged in, and you got an error like this because the font it was trying to use isn't on your system, and Blizzard has a hard error now if you try to set a font or style that's not valid. And many, many add-ons were affected by this. If you logged in, DBM was broken, Plater was broken, most unit frames are broken, BigWix is broken, everything was broken because we had the item coded around the way the function was expected to work and didn't know it was changed how it worked. So add-ons had to put numerous patches out like this, where we now have a function to validate the font, and we check what font is used, such as lib shared media, and if the font is still installed, we do nothing. But if the font is no longer installed, we actually reset the set user settings for them before set font is called, so things work out okay. Of course, because we had no time to test it and we were rushing out fixes, many add-ons actually had multiple takes to do it. Plater, I think, had 4 updates before it was actually working right. DBM had 3, and I'm going to explain that right now. Oop, that's the next bug, sorry. But when I put the first update out, I didn't consider a race condition, you know. When we're trying to rush just to get the add-on into even a usable state, we do some brief testing to make sure the fix works and put it out. But just because it works for us doesn't mean it's going to work for every user. So we put out an update, or I put out an update, And one thing I didn't factor was a race condition. I was checking if a font is installed because DBM needs to know whether that font exists on login. Because on login, many add-ons have to set text right away. Because, like for Plater, for example, you log in, there's a nameplate right in front of you. So it needs to set the text immediately. So it needs to check if the font exists immediately. But one such thing as a race condition is, let's say, DBM loads before Plater or some other add-on that you're using, but you're using a font that's provided by the add-on that loads after DBM. Well, now on login, DBM is checking for if the font exists, find it doesn't, and it's resetting your settings. The problem is the font does exist, it just hasn't loaded yet because DBM loaded first. So then we had to issue second updates and third updates to fix things like that. And that's why Tuesday, most of your add-ons were a hot mess. But that's not the only reason your add-ons are broken on Tuesday. The stock UI was also broken. And that brings us to this issue. You might have been in RAID and noticed something was a little funny was going on. You had multiple of the same debuff. Even your stock unit frame, this isn't even an add-on, this is stock unit frames. Multiple copies of the same debuff were showing, it was broken. This is DBM, it's broken too, but it's not DBM's fault it's broken. It's this bug right here. Blizzard had a regression in the private auras API that was throwing Lua errors, and because of the errors, it wasn't correctly disabling auras when they were removed, which left all these ghost or bugged auras on your screen during boss fights. So you went to a boss, and it was a hot mess. You were raiding like this. On top of some of your add-ons still not working because by the time raid started, you might have still had some add-ons that weren't updated for set font because there were EU players who'd already gone to bed, and you had to wait till Wednesday in NA to get a fix. Now, EU players, you're lucky. NA is always beta testing for you, and you don't belong on the computer desk. Behave, but say hi. Anyways, you can thank NA beta testers for this. But believe it or not, EU had their share of mess too because everything was not fixed. In fact, this particular bug, for example, wasn't fixed until late Thursday night. And another bug that I want to talk about that I don't have pictures for, an accessibility regression that happened in the patch. Many of you who rely on the new audio helpers for accessibility, the audio cues like entering combat or all the other combat alerts they have in there, you might have noticed too that they were very hard to hear. They were very silent. That's because the patch also introduced a regression to where those sounds started playing on the wrong sound channel. Instead of playing on the sound channel you can actually configure in there, where the actual slider in-game controls the audio for it, it somehow got linked to the wrong sound channel, the sound effects channel, where all the combat audio occurs. So when you were changing the volume slider, it wasn't doing anything. And you couldn't fix it because you didn't know this. Blizzard silently fixed this too Thursday. And I'm pointing all these bugs out because nobody told you it was broken. And even after it was fixed, they didn't even tell you it was fixed. They just kind of let it slide because they figured the less to tell you, the better, because if they told you the truth of how much stuff was really broken, you'd be even more angry. And you'd get even more empty promises from Blizzard that we've heard before, that we're sorry, we'll do better next time. Well, how many times have we heard that? Many times. And with their latest apology, if you look on the forums, nobody's taken seriously. Absolutely nobody. They're saying actions speak louder than words, and they're right. If the patches keep launching broken again and again and again, and we experience this every patch, players are just gonna stop believing anything Blizzard says until they see different results. I mean, this speaks for itself. We literally had the same blank, empty statements directly from Ian for 11.15. So why is 12.05 giving the same empty apology? Can Blizzard continue to sustain the 8-week cycle? We're waiting to find out, but so far they're proving that it's causing problems for their testing process and the quality of their patches. Anyways, that's all I have to say for this video. Please follow the stream, please like the channel and the video, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.